Compound lifts, movements like squats, deadlifts, and presses that work several muscle groups and joints simultaneously, build more overall strength per minute spent training than isolating one muscle at a time. These movements have anchored serious strength training for over a century, and skipping them in favor of only small, isolated exercises genuinely leaves strength on the table that compound movements would otherwise unlock. Part of why they're so efficient is coordination. A squat, for instance, doesn't just train the legs, it simultaneously demands core stability, balance, and coordination across multiple joints working together, which is a kind of full body training stimulus. No single isolation exercise can fully replicate on its own. Adequate protein intake supplies the raw material your body actually uses to repair and build muscle tissue. Here's a detail worth understanding. Muscles are primarily rebuilt during rest, not during the workout itself. The training session creates the stimulus, but protein provides the material for the repair that follows afterward. Individual needs vary by body size, activity level, and goals. So more protein isn't automatically better once genuine needs are already being met. The body can only use so much for repair at any given time, and spreading intake reasonably across the day tends to support that repair process more effectively than one enormous meal. Quality sleep is when the body does the majority of its actual muscle repair, driven by hormone release that peaks specifically during deep sleep stages. Poor sleep can measurably reduce both strength and recovery, even when training itself is close to perfect, which means no amount of extra effort in the gym can fully compensate for consistently cutting sleep short. Sleep also plays a direct role in regulating testosterone and cortisol balance, two hormones that significantly influence how effectively the body builds and maintains muscle tissue over time, making consistent sleep timing nearly as influential as the training itself. Consistent training frequency matters more than any single, occasionally maximal session. Showing up regularly, even at moderate intensity, tends to outperform sporadic all out efforts, largely because an all or nothing mindset frequently leads to more missed sessions overall than a sustainable, repeatable routine ever would. Building a genuine habit around training, treating it like brushing your teeth rather than a decision to be renegotiated every single day, removes an enormous amount of the willpower that would otherwise be spent just deciding whether to show up at all. Rest and recovery days are when torn muscle fibers actually rebuild and thicken. Training itself only creates the stimulus that breaks tissue down, while genuine growth happens during the recovery period that follows. Skipping rest in pursuit of more training equals more results often backfires, leading to fatigue and even reduced performance over time rather than faster progress. Some of the strongest gains actually show up a day or two after a hard session, once the repair process has had time to fully complete, which is part of why elite training programs deliberately schedule lighter or completely off days, rather than treating rest as simply the absence of productive work. Hydration matters more to strength than most people assume, since muscle tissue itself is composed largely of water. Even mild dehydration has been shown to measurably reduce strength output and endurance. And notably, thirst itself often lags behind the body's actual hydration needs, so waiting to feel thirsty isn't a reliable guide. Fluid balance also plays a role in how efficiently nutrients and oxygen actually reach working muscle tissue during exercise, which is part of why performance can quietly decline before dehydration ever becomes noticeable as an obvious symptom. Creatine is a naturally occurring compound that helps muscles produce quick bursts of energy, and it's one of the most extensively researched supplements in all of sports science. Benefits build gradually with consistent daily use rather than appearing immediately, and despite lingering myths, it's not a banned or unsafe substance. It's a compound your body already produces and stores naturally on its own. Found in modest amounts in foods like red meat and fish, decades of research have consistently found it to be one of the safest, most well studied supplements available, which is a big part of why it's recommended so widely across strength and conditioning science. A proper warm up gradually prepares muscles and joints before heavier effort, and warm muscle tissue can actually produce more force than cold tissue, alongside a meaningfully lower injury risk. Skipping it to save a few minutes frequently costs far more time later through preventable strain or injury. A well structured warm up doesn't just raise muscle temperature either, it also mentally primes focus and coordination for the heavier work that follows, effectively serving double duty as both a physical and mental transition into a training session. Mind muscle connection means deliberately focusing your attention on the specific muscle working during each repetition rather than simply moving the weight from point A to point B. Research has found that focused attention can measurably increase how much muscle fiber actually activates during a lift, a completely free technique upgrade that a lot of people skip simply by rushing through repetitions on autopilot. Slowing down, even briefly pausing at the point of peak tension in a movement, gives the nervous system a clearer signal about which muscle is actually supposed to be doing the work. Grip strength training targets an often overlooked foundation that quietly limits many other lifts before the intended target muscles are ever fully challenged. Interestingly, researchers have found grip strength linked to broader long term health outcomes, not just lifting performance specifically. Yet it's rarely trained directly, even though it becomes the limiting factor in exercises like deadlifts and pull ups far more often than people realize. Simple additions like carrying heavy objects for short distances or hanging from a bar for time can meaningfully build this often neglected foundation without requiring any dedicated equipment at all. Daily walking, sometimes called non exercise activity thermogenesis, adds up meaningfully across an entire day in ways a single workout can't fully replace. Non exercise movement can burn more total energy across a week than one isolated training session, and it also supports recovery by gently increasing blood flow to muscles without adding additional training strain on top of it. This kind of light, frequent movement, walking to run errands, taking stairs, simply not sitting still for hours at a stretch, adds up almost invisibly, which is exactly why its total contribution is so easy to underestimate. Mobility and stretching maintain the usable range of motion around your joints, and better mobility directly enables safer, more effective form on every other lift on this list. It's frequently treated as optional, even though it quietly supports the technique and safety of nearly everything else you do in training. Good mobility around the hips and shoulders in particular tends to translate directly into better depth and control on major compound lifts, which connects this habit directly back to how effectively those foundational movements can actually be performed. Sunlight exposure drives your skin's natural production of vitamin D, a hormone like compound that's been linked in research to muscle function itself, not just bone health as commonly assumed. Many people, especially in lower sunlight regions or seasons, run lower than they realize without ever noticing symptoms directly tied to it. Because vitamin D functions more like a hormone than a typical vitamin, its influence reaches well beyond bones alone, touching processes involved in muscle contraction and repair that researchers are still actively working to fully map out. Stress management keeps chronic stress hormones from staying persistently elevated, since chronically high cortisol can actually work against the same muscle building processes training is meant to support. It's worth remembering that physical training is itself a form of stress on the body, too. Recovery from every stress source, not just the gym, matters together as one connected system. Someone under heavy work or life stress may need more recovery time from the exact same workout than they would during a calmer period, since the body doesn't neatly separate gym stress from everything else it's simultaneously managing. Progress tracking, simply recording what you lift over time, makes progress visible in a way memory alone rarely captures accurately. Without it, it's surprisingly easy to plateau for months without ever quite noticing, since relying on memory alone often leads to unintentionally repeating the exact same weights indefinitely. Beyond just the practical benefit, seeing a visible record of steady improvement also tends to reinforce the motivation to keep training consistently, turning progress itself into part of what sustains the habit long term. Limiting excess alcohol matters because heavy drinking can measurably disrupt both sleep quality and the muscle repair processes that depend on it. This is genuinely about moderation rather than necessarily complete avoidance for everyone, but it's worth being honest about the real, measurable cost heavier drinking has on recovery specifically. Alcohol can interfere with the deeper stages of sleep in particular, the exact stages most closely tied to the hormone release that supports muscle repair discussed earlier in this video, connecting this habit directly back to sleep quality as well. Post workout nutrition, refueling with a balanced meal in the hours following training, helps replenish what a workout depletes. It's worth knowing that the timing window is considerably less strict than older fitness advice used to suggest. Your overall daily intake matters far more than hitting some narrow, supposed anabolic window immediately after finishing a workout. That said, a reasonably timed meal afterward still supports comfort and consistent energy for whatever the rest of the day holds, even if the precise minute by minute timing matters far less than it was once made out to be. And finally, long term consistency is really the habit that makes every other habit on this list actually matter at all. Meaningful strength gains are measured in months and years, not days or even weeks. And chasing quick results is one of the most common reasons people give up right before real, visible progress would have actually begun.